Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this week's episode of Working It Out with Darius. I'm especially excited about this month series. We're going to be talking about relationships. And I'm excited about our guests that we're going to have. We're going to have Greg Osei and we're going to have Jade. So we're going to be talking about our relationships with ourselves and how that informs other relationships in our lives as well. So as we get started, just want to make you aware that September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And we have up here the hotlines for suicide prevention. If you feel like you're in need of help, if you're in fear of your own safety, that you might be a harm to yourself, we definitely have these resources for you. You can check them out. Also at City Love Speaks on Facebook and on Instagram as well. We'll have those resources for you going forward. Thank you so much, everyone. We're about to bring on my friend Greg Osei. How you doing, Greg?
Hello. I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It is so good to see you. So good to see your face and to hear your voice.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. So just a quick check, like just where are you, like geographically, where are you located? And just tell us, like, just how are you doing in this moment?
I am in Harlem, New York City. And how am I doing in this moment? I'm doing okay. I had if we're being honest, we're being honest, right?
Yes,
so I had a little bit of a rough day yesterday. In a lot of ways. And then I had therapy today, which was great. And so I actually felt better by the time I woke up today, that's a thing, right? Like sometimes you're just having a rough day, and one of the things that gets me through is I'm like, this is not forever, this will pass. So by the next morning I was good. But in any case, like I got to talk out a bunch of that stuff. So that was cool.
Interesting enough, my day yesterday was horrible. And wasn't it also like Harvest Moon or something like that? I know there was a full moon. Like,
it's really funny that you say that. A friend of mine who was traveling was like, "Can you please send me like a relaxed playlist because I'm about to fly and this full moon is taking me through it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I think you're right. I didn't know about the moon, but
on our show last week, Tabitha was telling us about like there was a full moon, and it was So once bringing all that into the conversation, like it makes sense for me, and we're both Tauruses, so like we have that on that same vibe and that same wavelength. So I totally get that. Today has been better. It is still a challenge, but so this month we're talking about relationships, and this episode is about relationships to self. And I thought about you because I thought about how you engage yourself deliberately. Like I would read some of your posts with notes to self and some of the things that you would say. And I brought it up, and there was one that I read that I thought was, I want to read this because
what is it?
Hold on, where did I
don't even know what I say sometimes.
Oh, this one, it says, note to self: self-doubt and self-deprecation are as egoic as arrogance and self-aggrandizement. I love that word, although I can't really pronounce it. They are not cute, humble, or helpful. Let your ego shrink so that your works can be greater along with all of us. So like, those notes to self, to me, I was like, wow, like, and I could tell that they were deliberately written for you to read now and then at a later point in time. So talk to me a little bit like how you came to have these notes to self, like when you started kind of like having a curiosity about yourself and how it's grown into what your relationship to yourself looks like now.
Well, I am a very sort of searching person. I tend to like be very analytical in general, just about things, about life. I'm curious. I tend to like pay attention to a lot of things. I'm like a person that notices a lot of the subtleties and nuances of like life and people particularly. But I think that fed into how I relate to myself on a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way that it kind of shifted into this sort of notes to self thing is that I just I've always kind of felt like I that like fulfillment or feeling fulfilled and feeling good in my life on some sort of level, some might say like feeling happy, is like, and it's like an essential aspect of life. It's like something that I kind of demand of life, if that makes sense. So like,
right.
I've always been kind of like, is what's going on right now fulfilling to me? Is this working for me? Is there something in this experience that I feel like I'm not getting out? Or is there something that feels harmful to me in this experience? Like I've always been kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my personality, which partially might be a Taurus thing, like my tendency when I find that there's something in my experience that is not in alignment or that doesn't feel good,
Mm-hmm.
is to be like, well, what actions can I take? Right? So, because I mean, you know, there's always going to be someone or something outside of you that's causing things as well, but I can't always control that. And the idea that like my happiness or my fulfillment is completely in the hands of someone or something else just doesn't sit well with me. So I'm always like, well, there's something that I can do. What is that thing? Right. And so that's where the sort of like, okay, well, let me search myself. What did I contribute? Is something in the way that I think coming into this? Is something in who I'm surrounding myself or like with contributing to this or whatever. And so that's kind of where the sort of like dialoguing with self about that kind of stuff came in. And then I just started realizing, oh, maybe other people would find this helpful too. And also it's great because Facebook gives you those like memories. And so like 3 years later, I'll get a note that I don't even remember writing. And I'm like, I needed that. So that's kind of why I started like sharing it in social media.
Right. And that's, that is amazing. I can remember as you started writing those notes yourself, and sometimes I'd be like, oof. Wait a minute, like were you just in my conversation? Were you just in my head? And I think that the way that you show how you're engaging yourself in these conversations is exactly that, very, very helpful. And I remember when we were talking, you talked about what can you add, or what do you have power over in your own experience? And I remember there were 3 things that you talked about when we were having our pre-production show. And can you tell what those 3?
Oh, yeah. Well, it goes back to this idea of looking at my experience and is there something am I unhappy in my experience in some way, or do I feel unfulfilled in my experience? And like this was when back when I lived in Argentina, I came to this like, I don't know, I came up with this phrase or whatever, or this idea, which is like, if I love myself and I find that there's something in my experience that is harmful or that I'm not okay with or that I don't feel aligned with, then out of love, I will do one of 3 things. I will change the way I look at my situation. I will change the situation, or I will change situations. So change my perspective on whatever I'm going through, because that sometimes can change your experience from a negative one to a positive one. If it is within my power, I will change the situation in some way, or I will move on to some other situation. Yeah, because I feel like that is something. All 3 of those things are things that are clearly options that we have, and especially 1 and 3, right? Like we can definitely choose to at least try to change our perspective. And if we can't change our perspective and we can't do anything about the situation, we always can move on to something else, or like work towards that at least.
Right.
I don't actually like to use the word always. I always say that always and never are not human words. But I think that that's often something that's within our power anyway.
Absolutely. And let's talk about, as you begin to make these notes to yourself and have these conversations with yourself. Like, I remember you were telling me how your experience with finding a picture of your younger self and what your initial response was, and then like talk to me how you begin to like have that conversation with that younger self after that point.
So right. So in that sort of process of self-searching, I realized that I had a lot of unresolved things from my past, from my childhood, and I learned, and so I like did a lot of like reading about that kind of stuff and talking to people who kind of had experience in that, and I came upon this idea that like we have like an inner child or many inner children, and the idea was that actually like all of our, basically we carry our past experiences with us, right? And so and we can like perceive those if we choose. We can perceive those as like younger versions of ourselves within ourselves. And so I became interested in like, okay, well, there's definitely some things that I want to work through from my childhood and from my teenage years. And one of the things that I'd read about is that you can actually like look at a picture of yourself and have a conversation with yourself.
Okay.
And so what I found is that I think I found like a picture from when I was like in high school or something. And it was just very interesting because I noticed that when I first looked at the picture, I was like, I was so skinny and lanky and I look so awkward and like, why am I dressed like that? And like, and I'm having all these thoughts. And then I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing right now? And then I realized it's like, okay, this is what I'm doing when I look back, which means it's probably how I think about myself when I look back. And if I'm thinking about how I was back then that's probably a piece of how I think about myself now. And that's certainly it's probably how I was thinking about myself back then, and probably something that people were saying to me, which is definitely a thing, because people used to make fun of me for being skinny. They used to call me stretch arm strong and whatever. Anyway, so that was my first reaction. And then I was like, okay, well, my kind of task in this moment is to like, be able to look at this picture and see just beauty and lovability and worth, because that's what I've been looking for in my present experience. And like part of the reason why I'm having difficulty finding that is because of the ways I didn't either feel that or give that to myself when I was younger.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I think that's amazing, being able to understand what you felt when you saw yourself, and how you were able to like begin to like break that down. Okay, so this is a combination of how I felt about myself then, because a lot of it was also built around what I was told about myself then. And the things that I'm saying is that also it is an extension of how I in some way feel about myself now. Absolutely. And then connecting those two is the process of healing. Like if I'm going to want to speak well of myself now, I now need to speak well of this young child in me as well. So thank you for that, man. And
it's crazy too, because if you think about it, if you looked at a picture of some other child, some teenager, you would feel terrible. Well, I imagine you'd feel terrible if you were like, ew, this person is so awkward, and like you wouldn't say that to a child because it's a child, right? So it's like, why would I speak that way about my own child? You know what I mean? Kind of like,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Greg, for sharing. We're going to bring you back on later and to have a chat with myself and Jade. So please stick around. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. And we will see you shortly. So I am very, very excited right now at this moment in time to bring on my friend and my brother, who's going to be adding a segment with us. It is going to be none other than my brother, Damian Michael.
Hey.
How are you, sir?
I am dynamic. How are you?
I am doing well. Good.
Good.
So, I'm so glad to have you here with us. And so we're just going to let you take it away.
All right. As Darius shared with you earlier today, at the beginning of the show, rather, is that our focus for the month is relationships. And in my time of reflection and meditation, I couldn't help but think about how for so long and for so many years I invested in so many other relationships and totally neglected the main relationship, and that's relationship with self. Relationships with self invoke or invite self-love and also self-worth. And in this moment, I'm grateful that am continually learning the balance of self-worth, self-love, and a relationship with myself. I gained so much strength in getting to know who I am. And so today, our gratefulness and our moment of gratefulness and thankfulness is being thankful just for the relationship with yourself, getting to know you, learning your boundaries, learning how to love yourself most of all, as well as others. So everyday gratefulness is relationship with yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Damien.
Thank you.
You so much for coming on with us. And stay tuned in with us. Damien's going to be joining with us for Everyday Gratefulness each week on our episodes with Working Out with Darius. I'm so excited about that. So up next, we're going to bring on Jade, the Black Plant Chick. Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm sorry. I'm having issues with these slides back here.
No problem. Listen, wait, I was back here in the back room or whatever, and I didn't realize it said only the host can see you. So I'm over here like, and then I just read it down there like, oh, he probably sees me all like trying to.
Yeah, I'm able to see everybody when they're backstage. Yeah, but it is all good. So, I am so excited to have you with us. I initially got exposed to you through our common sister friend, Veronica, who is Brown Skin Plant Mama, and I saw an episode that you were talking together. And so, first, I just wanted you to introduce us to who you are, because I know you also have a podcast. So give you a moment to catch us up on who you are and where you are. And yeah, then we'll jump into our conversation.
All right. Well, I am in Atlanta, Georgia. So who I am is such a loaded question because I am a woman of so many different hats, but I am a podcaster. I'm a published author. I am a plant mama. I am, gosh, so many things. I'm an influencer, all of those great things.
Awesome. And I can remember being on the episode and hearing you talk about owning those titles, you know, about being an influencer. Yeah, and what it took. And so like the fact that you said all that right now, I'm just like, yes.
I know. I'm trying to do better. And I still left off some things, but I'm doing better.
But in everything that you said, you know, from, you know, like I said, hearing what you said on your podcast about, you know, not feeling like, well, what is an influencer? Is that who I am? To standing up and saying, no, this is who I am, and this is how I am an influencer. So specifically on that podcast, because one of the things, I mean, on the episode with Veronica, you talked about meeting your younger self during meditation. Because one of the things that Greg and I were talking about on the last leg of our segment together was he deliberately, you know, went to a photo, looked at it, heard the things he was saying, was able to recognize the trauma that was wrapped up in there, and then, you know, started the process of like healing himself by writing these notes to himself and really having that conversation. So tell us about your experience. Well, I guess my first question was it deliberate or not? Or was it just something that kind of happened?
No, it was not deliberate.
Okay.
Not at all. And it was definitely something that I was not prepared for. The first time, so it's happened 3 times. The first time was one that I talk about often. I was preparing myself to meditate. I was like in the closet, kind of getting away from the noise in the house, stuff like that. And what I do normally to sort of center myself and to kind of get out of what's happening right now when I'm meditating is doing this old trick that I learned, which is called like you keeping your eye on a sailboat and you're watching it go across the water. It's something that I learned a long time ago, and it's always worked. It allows me to leave reality for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started that, and then immediately it was almost like I changed the channel.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just confronted with a little girl who turned out to be me. And she grabbed my hand, and then we just started running through a field, and I could feel her. I could feel the breeze from the field. I could see all of the very vibrant colors. And it was interesting because every time that I found myself sort of coming back to, and that's thinking about, oh, I got to feed my child, or, I got to get back to work, I could see her face get sad,
Oh.
sort of letting me know, like, to stay in this moment. And I did, and I was very emotional during that meditation. I could feel the tears, filling up in my eyes, and I could feel them coming down my face. And it was very surreal to me, so much that it scared the mess out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to kind of really think about what that meant. And it took a while for me to really be able to look at it, unfold it, and sort of say, okay, this definitely is something greater. There's a message there. I don't know how I'm going to find it, but it's in this place. When I meditate, it's right there. And I mean, I can go on into the other stories of meditating and all those other experiences, but yeah, that's the first one that really started it off.
Right. It's what I found. Well, how this was so perfect. Especially going into this month about relationships and everything, was that literally the week before I saw you, I was visiting a friend of mine, and I was visiting Jade, the producer for the show. I was visiting him, and he has these two paintings in his living room, and one of them is of a little boy who turns out it's his younger brother. And I think this painting is like of Easter Sunday, what his younger sister and younger brother were doing on Easter Sunday, and his younger brother would always be hiding. And the painting is gorgeous. This brown skinned boy, bright eyes that are haunting, and he's looking. So I was like, I don't know if I can sit here and have this young boy staring at me. And so as I was going to sleep, and because I have a lot of times I have insomnia, so I listen to music and I meditate, and I went into sleep, and the universe was saying, you need to find that young boy in you. Like he's hiding. And that is this, especially during this time, COVID, so many things are so restricted, and a lot of work that we could be doing ourselves is the time. And so that was the experience I had. And then to hear you talk about meeting during meditation, I'm just like, okay.
Ooh. Yeah, it still brings me chills. And then all of the other moments that I meditated. So after that moment, I only meditated 2 other times, because each time something different happened that has scared me, but also woke me up in a way that I was like, ooh, like, all right, like, here we go. And no, I'm not going into those spaces like, all right, whoever's out there to come and sit with me during this meditation, let's do this. I'm just going because I want to calm myself and, center myself. And then, boom, something happens. And I'm just like, whoo. Yeah.
Can we take a moment, because we're talking about meditation, and I just want to take a moment to real quick talk about like what that is, because I think people sometimes have this misinterpretation that meditation is about completely clearing your mind of all thoughts and all this, and it's totally actually the opposite, because we spend so much time trying to focus our mind on one thing, and we are it's almost like a unruly child that we're trying to get to sit down in one place.
And it doesn't work.
Don't speak, don't do this. Look at this person, think about this. That when you meditate, it's actually a place where you just allow yourself to
just be. Yep. I had to, because at first that's what I used to think. I was like, how am I going to turn off my thoughts? Like, as a writer, all of my characters live here. I can't turn all them off, like at no point at all. And
Right.
so for me, it's like, how do I do that? And that's what I thought initially meditation was. But I learned it was just a moment for me to just be still. And just to be in a space of, okay, I am here. I feel my breath. I can feel myself touching my arms, my legs. You know, I am appreciating everything within. I am, just everything, just being in that moment. And then sometimes, yes, during those meditative states, you will find yourself going to other places. And that's what's been happening to me. Yeah.
Oh, that is amazing. And I think that for me, what I discovered helps me connect with myself and center myself is through worship music. And it's because for a long time I grew up in church, and when we were praying for hours, like on hours, that's a form of meditation, because you're there for a reason. And so when I began to tap into those methods in which I used back then, that actually get me to a place where I can be with myself and allow myself to be free with my own thoughts. Like, I was like, yeah, this is an amazing thing.
It feels good.
Yeah, so I'm curious, because I want to ask about some of the other moments in which
I can tell you, they're not long. Yeah,
can you share one other? Because I do want to end with us and then bring Greg back so we can talk, because I do want to talk about how our relationship with ourselves inform our relationships with other people, specifically intimate relationships as well. But yeah, tell me another time of your encounter.
Well, I'll tell you about the last time, because that one was my first time really being able to knowing that my ancestors were here. So it was it had been like maybe a couple of weeks ago. I go back through the same routine to meditate. Once again, my younger self is there, but this time she's leading me to leading me to a specific area. Whereas the last time we were kind of running and just enjoying each other. But she led me to this area, and I sat down, and when I looked up, I see nothing but women standing in front of me. I couldn't see their faces, but I could just feel their presence. And they were almost sending to me sort of this message, just letting me know that I'm going to be okay. And, that I'm doing what I need to be doing. And without saying it, but I could feel their energy. And that's when I realized that my ancestors were watching over me. They're protecting me. They're putting me in the places where I need to be. And I felt that energy, and it was freaky as heck. Because, if you're not prepared for that, going through that is something crazy. And it happened within 10 minutes, I believe. I cried, and then I came back to reality. But I saw my younger self, and I just saw all of these women, and yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
it was incredible. Yeah.
Wow.
It's almost what's crazy is it's almost hard to believe when I'm speaking it, because sometimes people think, oh my God, that story is crazy, there's no way. And so sometimes I second guess myself, but I'm like, no, you had this experience. It's not your job to make someone else believe it. You can share your story, but at the end of the day, you experience that. When I tell the story, it makes me cry, because that's how real it was.
Yes, absolutely. And I definitely feel you on, thinking to yourself, wait a second, that doesn't, it's like, no, you had the experience. What you experienced is valid, and you really have to hold on to that. Yeah. So I'm thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us about those experiences. And we're going to bring you right back up again with Greg, and we're going to continue this conversation. So thank you so much, and I will see you in a moment.
You're welcome.
Awesome. All right. Let's see, I'm trying to do this here. All right. Welcome back. And I have with me both Greg and Jade. Hello, both of you.
Hey.
Okay.
So we've been talking about our relationships to self. And one of the common things that I noticed in our conversations was as we're engaging this younger self and as we're engaging ourselves, we're doing with such compassion and love and almost like a romance, if you think about it. Like, because you said you've had that experience now 2 or 3 times.
I've had it 3 times. Yeah.
3 times. And I mean, I think I was like, okay, so now it's almost like, okay, I might see her again.
Yeah.
And it really does kind of like it could spark this new joy about getting to know who we are in a different way. Whereas before, I always looked at something I was afraid of. So can you, Greg, give some thoughts about that, about how having this insight, giving ourselves this type of compassion and what that means for you?
What it means to have compassion with myself?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I mean, I think that when you get into a space of like getting to know yourself and gaining greater understanding of yourself and what works for you, etc., especially if you have a certain personality type, it can be really interesting because learning to be compassionate with yourself, which I think that is actually not a thing that many of us are really taught, by the way. Like I think that in a lot of ways we are taught, even in the way that we're educated and the way that we're disciplined, right? That when we're learning lessons, we're kind of taught like, you know, when it hurts, like you deserve it, and that should teach you. And so then we treat ourselves that way, for example, right? But trying to be compassionate with the self is like a challenge. It's like a lifelong challenge,
Yeah.
I think. And for me, it's been interesting because just like some people say with the ego, they say like the ego is really sneaky. Similarly, I think like the non-compassionate self can be really sneaky, in as much as, on the one hand, as I'm working through things, I want to be compassionate with myself, but I have a tendency to want to beat myself up, right? But the flip side is that as I become passionate about making my life better, living a more fulfilled life, I find sometimes that I won't even realize it, but I'm beating myself up for not being compassionate enough, or I'm beating myself up for not doing the work right. So then it's like, oh, wait, I'm actually doing the same thing on the other side without meaning to. And so it's like this constant balancing act. It's like the interesting thing about therapy is that I'll notice in therapy that I'll be like a couple of sessions ago, I was like, I feel like you're steering the conversation away from the uncomfortable stuff because you think it's not enough for me. That I'm worried that like I need to be doing more towards the uncomfortable stuff, because like if I'm not working, I don't think I'm working hard enough. And he was like,
Slow down.
I get really intense. I'm like, I want to go there. I want to fix it. And he's like, he actually said something. He said, he talked about like hot water. Right. He was like, if you're filling up a tub and you want to see if it's hot, and you touch it and it's hot, you pull your hand away and you let it cool down. He's like, you don't dip your hand and leave it in there and be like, I need to, you know what I mean? I need to get this.
Right.
And so similarly, he's like, it's okay to approach the uncomfortable or approach the work and then take a step back and reflect and give yourself a moment to process without like needing to be in the center of the intensity of the work at all times. I think that's an important part of compassion. And that's like what I've been probably working on the most in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Awesome. I want to, Jade, I definitely want to get your response about compassion for yourself and your experience in that. But I also want to begin to shift the conversation to talk about interpersonal relationships, specifically romantic ones, and know that none of us are speaking as experts here. I know I am not an expert on dating or anything like that. However, I can talk about how my relationship with myself has then informed how I engage in romantic relationships. So, Jade, if you want to talk a bit about your self-compassion and then like how that informs when you're engaging in interpersonal relationships and romantic relationships.
So I think for me, with when it comes to self-compassion, it's being able to forgive myself for different things. So I'm very, very hard on myself. If I don't complete something, if I don't know, didn't meet a deadline, whatever, I can be very, very hard on myself. And so for me, it goes all the way back to even my childhood and just being able to forgive myself for mistakes that I've made as a kid and why I didn't end up in a certain direction. And I should have been married or should have been this and should have been that. And so blaming myself for the direction that I took as a child into teenage. So being able to forgive myself is a big part of compassion to me personally. And so you were saying as far as how my relationship with myself affects my relationship.
Right. How as you engage with your inner self and you have that compassion for yourself and in that engagement, like how does that inform or does that even inform how you engage in interpersonal relationships? And I guess to kind of explain what I'm talking about, I'll go first just to give a little.
Yeah.
So one of the things that especially when I think about dating is that as we were having the conversations about meditation, we talked about being in a place where you allow your mind to be free and you can just be and be authentic, and how in that space is where I can have the most compassion for myself, right? And so I think about when I engage or when I'm dating or when I'm getting to know someone, the need for me to be able to show up authentic and to create a space where they can do the same.
Right.
So for me, that means that a lot of the rules around dating, I don't ascribe to those things because to me, it sets up all these barriers and traps about expectations about what you want someone to be, which is the exact same thing that got my inner self, that younger child, to hide. So if I'm allowing that person within me to then grow and develop, because I also think that as a gay man, I'm very, very underdeveloped in how to express my love and affection or interest in another man. So that as I think about relationships has been very present for me. So that's how my relationship with myself is informing how I engage. I'm not saying it's successful, but that is one of the things that I have been getting incorporated because I have to realize that if I'm going to be forgiving and compassionate myself, because a lot of times we have different rules when it comes to the boo than we do our friends. Right. So any comment, Jade? Go right ahead.
For me, when it comes to relationships and what I've learned recently is that no matter what, my happiness comes first. And I have to be okay with that person also knowing that their happiness comes first. It doesn't mean that, if I don't want to call you today, it doesn't mean disrespect. It doesn't mean you get to be out there doing whatever you want to do. But it means that you enjoy doing this one particular thing, or I don't know, some sort of self-care thing that you enjoy doing. But your happiness comes first. And so because I've been able to accept that for myself, I can accept that from my partner. And I don't feel jealous or I don't feel like now I'm second. Like, no, you deserve to be happy, but it's not my responsibility to bring all that happiness to your life. You deserve to do some of that on your own completely. Like, the same way that I do. So knowing that I come first has helped me tremendously.
Greg, do you have something to add? or reflect off of what's already been said? Because and I'm sorry, I'll just respond real quick as you're gathering your thoughts. Because one of the things that you said, Jay, that I have adopted is that my happiness comes first, but that does not mean for the other person that my happiness comes first for them. It's like my happiness comes first for me, and your happiness comes first for you. So we
Exactly.
both fit in this huge widescreen TV picture where we can
Yep.
both have our happiness. And it's not a thing where I'm now sacrificing my happiness and the other person isn't. Or, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? So it's not, so
Or
it's
I'm looking to you to do everything to make me happy. And that's not fair. Like, that's no. Now I'm mad because you didn't do this one thing when I could have did that by myself. Like, you know what I mean? So I think once I learned that, it just became like so much better.
Right, right. And the other thing I think that I can comment on is just having compassion for. I think because of my mental health, I'm bipolar too, so I'm always thinking about all the ways in which I want someone to be considerate of me because of my mental illness. So that's the ways in which I want to be considerate of them. So and that's how, engaging in my own relationship with myself has informed that. Any thoughts from you now, Greg? What's going on in that head of yours?
Well, I mean, honestly, what comes to mind is kind of circling back to some stuff that we talked about before, which is like, again, finding the balance. Again, as someone who's searching and working on himself, it has definitely been an issue in my relationships, finding the balance between when something in my experience with another person is not as I would like, though there are things that I control, it is also important for me to recognize, like, also this person is maybe doing something that I'm not down with, and like that's also a thing. You know what I mean? Because I tend, especially given my own sort of like my childhood and my history, I tend to experience, and this is not even just in romantic relationships, but I tend to experience that if there is something that is not right in my space, that I am somehow not right. And so I need to fix something all the time, like always. And so it's been interesting because on the one hand, yes, I think that, I have had some challenges in relationships, particularly romantic relationships, because of things that I'm working on. But also some of the issues are actually because I always think I'm the issue. so learning, so like being like, wait, okay, it's great that you're analytical, it's great that you're self-analyzing, but it's also okay to say that hurt, I didn't like that, I want this, I don't want that. Like that's also, and even if I might be messing something up, I'm also, and this is actually something I affirm to myself pretty regularly because it's not, I'm like, Greg, it is okay for you to make mistakes. You are allowed to make mistakes. So like, I can also be wrong. I can say I'm mad and be wrong, that, wrong to be mad or whatever. No one's wrong to be mad. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I can be like, I don't like that you said that. And maybe that's jealous, but that's how I feel. And like, I'm allowed to feel that and then work through it, because like, one of the ways that we work through things is to express them first. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's
definitely bringing those. And I think this is something in relationships that is lacking, is like being able to have a conversation where we are able to bring what we are feeling into the space and not anyone feel like they're held responsible for what I'm feeling. Like, I am upset, I'm just bringing that into the space. I'm not asking anyone to be responsible, but this is the experience that I'm having.
This is how I'm feeling.
And literally begin to, I remember in one conversation I was having actually with a friend, but it was powerful. I was like, okay, we need to talk about this. So let's talk about this as if it was a third person, as if it's a third party conversation, and you can feel free to talk about this me as a third person as much as, and so, but it was a tool that you use to be able to be vulnerable in a space, just like in meditation, be in a space where you can allow your thoughts to be and feelings to be and be honored, Jade, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking over there?
I love that. Just being transparent and not being transparent, and then being okay with whatever the outcome is. So being able to share your feelings, even if the other person disagrees, or even if you're wrong, like you say, Greg, like, although my feelings were hurt, I know I was wrong for how, for taking this from 0 to 100. But the fact that I can come to you and just talk about it helps with communication. It helps us to problem solve. Like, in more ways than one. And I wish that we did that more as a people. Like, it's okay to say, you know, you was being a little extra yesterday. Like, I get that, you know, you was hungry, but you hurt my feelings because you said this one thing. I'm not mad at you, but I just want us to be in a to talk about it because my feelings were hurt. And being okay with whatever that outcome is, and you guys laughing it off or not, and moving on. Like, I just love being that transparent and that open. It's so freeing. It allows you to go to sleep, you know, with nothing on you and waking up new and not feeling like didn't say something, because a lot of times you don't even have that extra time to say something. We know life is so short. So being able to, in that moment, just be like, listen, either I'm mad, I love you, can we do this, can we do that? I was cursed and I had to catch myself. But being honest with whatever it is that you're feeling, because obviously tomorrow's not promised. So
absolutely. So we're winding down to the end of the show. I'm so happy to have you all. So we have one last question. What activity do you do to love on yourself? So both both of you, I mean, and listen, and you could be as open and honest about this and transparent about it in the space that you want or not. So either you want to jump on in there.
Oh, okay, I'll start. Well, okay, so I'll make this quick and I will make this a little PG. But so before I got into the plant world, I was a sex advocate. And so I was also a sex toy tester. Like, I was doing everything within that world. But when I got into that space, I learned so much about who I was as a sexual person. And I learned that self-care is more than just me going to go get my nails done, or me taking a hot bath, or me cleaning out my closet because it feels good cleaning out my closet. No, self-care also is me being intimate with myself by myself. And so that is for me the best thing. And it's not always about masturbation. It can simply be about loving on a part of your body that you talk so negatively about for you. And so, like, I used to teach women, go into the bathroom, and you may not like your breasts because you've had kids or you've had, you know, these things that taken place, but go into that bathroom and love on those areas, even if it feels uncomfortable. Like, that's your body. You can do something about it, but at the end of the day, that is your body, and you need to be able, because how can you be transparent in the bed with someone else if you're afraid to even expose those, you know, imperfect parts of you? So you have to love them first before you can expect someone else to love you. So I didn't mean to go like all the way there, but that is what self-care is for me. It's being intimate with myself.
Absolutely. Greg, what's going on, man? What do you got your thoughts for how you love yourself?
I'm still like,
right?
Ooh, you just spoke a word. You spoke a word.
Yes.
Like, I might need to go in the bathroom and find, I don't even know.
Listen, for real. For real.
Actually. What do I do to love on myself? I don't know. I mean, yours was so good. I'm like, oh, I mean, there are lots of things I do, but okay, so one thing that I do, I mean, since we have been speaking about the inner child, right? One thing I definitely do, particularly in challenging times or scary times, and like this is something that I've been doing throughout this time of quarantine, is I will, in my meditations or just in moments of reflection, I will literally speak to myself. I mean, I speak to myself all the time. I'm not an only child. I have two brothers, but I was raised alone. So I kind of like have an only child mentality a bit. And so I'm used to talking to myself, but I will go in and I will be like, hey, Greg, I'll actually say, hey, Nana, because that's what people used to call me when I was a kid. Hey, Nana, and my mom calls me that. How are you doing? Like, what do you want right now? What can I give you? And I'll be, you know, it's like, ooh, I want, you know, I really want you to, I want this meal. and then I'll like cook for myself. And I will cook. That's actually a thing because I realize this is not a thing that people do. I cook full meals, multiple courses, just for myself. I love food.
That's
I'm a
good.
tourist. I love food. I will cook a meal with multiple courses and garnish and whatever. And it's just for me. But then while I'm eating that, or whatever thing I do for myself, but like let's use that example. While I'm eating that, I literally take the time to be like, I did this just for you. I want you to know that. Like this is for you. Like no one else. It's because like, and I love you. You know what I mean? Like I'll have that kind of conversation with myself. I actually do that at the gym too. It's really weird. People do. When I'm working out at the gym and a set is really hard, I'm literally saying to myself, I love you, Greg. I love you. It's really weird. That's how I push through the last set. I'm like, I love you. Oh, God. So there's that.
Well, I'm going to say this. If your self-love look like that body you got, you are doing a great job of loving yourself.
Thanks, Sarah.
No, I'm sorry. Where you continue? Oh, you're finished.
No, that's it. I mean, I like to go into myself, ask myself what it is that I want or need. Like I said, particularly in challenging times, and then like offer it to myself. But I think there's something special about like telling yourself like, I'm doing this like fully willingly. Because like you remember as a kid, sometimes you'd ask for something and your parents would kind of like throw it at you, be like, here, stop your whining. And it's like a completely different energy when someone's like, I actually love giving this to you. Like this is it. And so like I like to have that relationship to myself because that's like what we would want from someone else,
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys. Thank you all so much for joining. Jade, the Black Plant Chick, Greg Osei, thank you so much. I'm definitely going to be reaching out to you again because there are more conversations about relationships. And I know, like I said, none of us are experts, but there are things that I think that we could offer people about intimate relationships because of work that we're doing to have that intimate relationship with ourselves. And knowing that those relationships outside of us should also reflect that work that we're doing within ourselves as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And again, we'll have you back.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks.
All right. So that was Greg Osei and Jade with us on Working It Out with Darius on our episode for relationships and talking about our relationship with ourselves. Here are resources, again, that we always want to make sure that we provide for you. NAMI.org is definitely a huge resource that we use here. And just to reiterate as well that it is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And this is the line that you can call if you ever need to talk, if you're ever feeling unsafe, or if you ever need someone to, reach out to. There's definitely a number there. We'll have this information for you on City Love Speaks website. And remember to join in with us tomorrow for City Love Speaks at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and again on Monday, Working Out with Darius at 8 o'clock as well. So thank you so much. I am so excited about upcoming episodes about relationships. Continue to join us. And at the end of this month, we will also have a recap with a therapist as well. So thank you for tuning in and have a great night.